All right, my losers of the week are boxing sanctioning bodies, which have a big fat bullseye on their backs should the bipartisan boxing reform legislation that was introduced this week by Congressman Brian Jack and Congresswoman Sharice Davids, if it becomes law. This legislation, which is called the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act, is an update on the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act of 2000, which was preceded by the Professional Boxing Safety Act of 1996. It's been endorsed by the Association of Boxing Commissions and Lonnie Ali, the wife of the late Muhammad Ali. So allow me, Sergio, some room to offer up my take on this because it is a polarizing issue. I reported a nuts and bolts story on SI.com on Wednesday, and I've spent the last couple of days talking to boxing lawyers, to managers, to promoters, both large and small. And I've talked to fighters to try to understand the broader impact this legislation could have on the sport should it ultimately get passed. I also spoke at length to Congressman Jack, who is the driving force behind this bill. So let's start here. This is a bill that overwhelmingly benefits TKO, which is the WWE UFC parent company, which, along with Turki Al-Sheikh, formed a boxing promotion, which announced last March plans to form a new boxing league. TKO has been signing dozens of mid-level fighters. They're currently working on a TV deal. I think they're going to get one, probably one that winds up bundled with the UFC rights. And this league is looking to launch in early 2026. Under the current laws, the UFC model cannot exist in boxing. You can't be a manager and a promoter. You can't create your own titles. You can't have your own rankings. It's federal legislation. I will get to the other parts of this bill, the minimum purses, the plussed up medical. All that, though, is really window dressing. The key piece of this bill is that if it passes, the UFC model can come to boxing. A talking point that has been passed around is that this legislation does not touch the Muhammad Ali Act. And that is technically true. The current sanctioning body-based model has to continue to abide by the Ali Act. But what this legislation would do is allow the creation of a new system that does not have to abide by the Ali Act. It has to do some things, good things. It has to increase health and safety protections, establish comprehensive anti-doping programs, enact anti-betting policies, stuff like that. But these UBOs, which are Unified Boxing Organizations, would not have to adhere to the Ali Act. That's because this is not an amendment to the Ali Act. It is an amendment to the Professional Boxing Safety Act of 1996 that creates a new system that exists outside of the Ali Act. So a key passage in the text of this bill is, quote, "A unified boxing organization shall be deemed to be in compliance with the requirements of this act if the UBO meets the conditions of the section which outlines the drug testing, the medical stuff, all the things that are in this UBO." The act it's referring to is not the Ali Act. It's the Professional Boxing Safety Act, which preceded the Ali Act. I know it's all kind of complicated, but this is operating outside of the Muhammad Ali Act. So what's the problem with this? Well, there are two immediate issues, and I'm going to categorize them as one that I care about and one I don't give a flying fuck about. Let's start with the one that I don't care about, and that's protecting the integrity of the sanctioning body system. The argument is that sanctioning bodies are independent and are legally required to explain their ratings. A UBO could come along and create its own rankings and not explain how they came to them. Those kind of rankings can be manipulated, and there is no protection or recourse for fighters if they are. And that's important because, look, if a fighter is ranked number 9, they probably make less money if they were ranked number 8 and 7, 6, and so on. So it is important to have a level of transparency with a ranking system. And I don't love any unilateral ranking system, but I also reject the idea that sanctioning bodies are independent. I reject the idea that sanctioning bodies operate with any ethics or are in the best interest of the sport. Among the reasons boxing is a mess is because sanctioning bodies have taken the power that the Ali Act gave them and abused it. I mean, technically each is independent, but it doesn't take an insider to see the coziness of some of the relationships. I mean, for years, Al Heyman and PBC did a lot of fights with the WBA, Top Rank now with the WBO. There are made-up titles. There are extra weight classes. There are rankings that are based more on relationships than on merit. And I'll give you a recent example. Diego Pacheco, the number one ranked super middleweight by the WBO. This week, the WBO dropped him 2 places. This is after Pacheco, who is undefeated, who is a career-long super middleweight, who has been rising the rankings, staying active. They dropped him after he pitched a near shutout against Trevor McCumbee, who was his best opponent to date. In his place at number 1 is Terrence Crawford, who has just one fight above 147 pounds, and that was at 154. In second place is Hamza Shiraz, who made his debut at 168 just 2 weeks earlier. So instead of being the mandatory challenger for one of Canelo Alvarez's belts and having the chance to become a world champion and all the money and prestige that comes with it, Pacheco is now sitting at number 3 with a murky path to a title. That is criminal. It's criminal. These sanctioning bodies have become a stain on boxing and have turned what should have been a symbiotic relationship into a parasitic one. So I don't love that argument for, keeping the current model in place, the protection of the Ali Act. But the Ali Act does have provisions that protect fighters. The most significant being a promoter's requirement to disclose the total revenue for an event before a fight. And this is an issue I do care about. This requirement is basically the money from the broadcaster, from the ticket sales, from sponsorships, all of it, all the money that's in the pot. A promoter oftentimes just wants the fighter to sign, doesn't even want to look at it. A fighter with a good manager or a fighter with a smart head in his or her shoulders, they're going to take it, they're going to read it, they're going to get a copy of it, they're going to take a picture of it because they want to know if the promoter is screwing them. That won't necessarily help them for that fight, but it will give them an idea of what financial ballpark they're playing in when they start negotiating the next one. If a UBO is not required to follow the Ali Act, then they are not required to disclose the total revenue. They may have to abide by state financial disclosures, but the majority of these disclosures are not as detailed as the ones required by the Ali Act. So if a fighter or a manager does not have access to the full revenue, there is a far greater chance that they can be taken advantage of. This is the kind of thing that caused a lot of problems in boxing before the Ali Act was introduced. So I think that is a looming problem. I mean, in the short term, for a lot of fighters, the UBO system will actually be a good thing. TKO is quietly amassing a pretty sizable roster, but the vast majority of these guys are mostly the kind of fighters that people have never heard of. I know a bunch of them. They're guys in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, couple losses on their record. These guys are getting very, very good contracts for fighters on that level. Money that they are not getting now. And for many, probably had no hope of getting. What I believe is happening is that TKO is trying to get enough fighters under contract in different weight classes so they can launch this league. They want to be able to do a top 10 in each division, so they're snapping up a lot of guys who really aren't top 10 fighters. Those guys are being told, we'll sign you, and even if you lose, we'll bring you back. So a lot of B and C level guys are jumping at that type of opportunity. I should note, I don't think the TKO is going to be alone in doing this. I think it's very likely you see most valuable promotions try something similar with women's boxing. MVP has signed most of the top talent in women's boxing already, and they are aggressively pursuing more. If this legislation gets passed, I could very easily see MVP creating a UBO to create the MVP women's title or something to that effect. So short term, you are going to see a lot of fighters that benefit from this. Long term, not having Ali Act mandated financial disclosures, that could be pretty harmful to guys. Another concern I have with this legislation is what it means for club boxing shows. This was something I was tweeting about with my guy Gray Johnson over at BoxRec, who loves club shows as much as I do, probably more. Club shows are the lifeblood of boxing. This is where a lot of young talent develop. This is where they develop fan bases. I talk a lot on this show about Tommy O'Toole, the Irish super middleweight, big star in Boston. His fan base grows every single time he fights. Justin Figueroa, another example. There is literally one fighter who can sell tickets in Atlantic City, and it's Justin Figueroa. That's because most of his fights have been at the club level in AC. These shows are so important for the growth and development of boxing. And a concern is that a TKO league would siphon off talent that would ordinarily be competing at a club level. I mean, it's already happening. I know of several fighters who have signed TKO contracts whose local promoter was paid a fee to let them out of their contracts. So it's happening as we speak. Now, I don't think the rise of a TKO league is going to kill club shows. For starters, there are a lot of fighters on these club shows that no promoter, TKO, Matchroom, Golden Boy, that they're going to want anything to do with. I mean, a lot of these guys are fun fighters who can sell tickets, but they have no shot at competing at a world level. I do think a lot, though, of the headliners, the mid-level guys, they'll get picked off, which will weaken these shows, even if it won't kill them off entirely. Now, could these club shows become de facto farm systems? Maybe. And the small promoters that I've talked to wouldn't really hate that. I mean, running a club promotion is not a lucrative business. Most of these guys, they barely break even, or they make a couple of bucks. Lou DiBella, who ran some of the best club shows in New York, Broadway Boxing, he stopped doing them in part because they were a money loser. You know, these shows, most of them don't have broadcast deals, and if they do, it's nothing. I think some of these guys would gladly be a part of the TKO ecosystem, officially or unofficially, if an offer was presented to them. Now, everything you have read has mentioned the federally mandated bump in fighter pay and improved health coverage, the minimum of $150 per round, the minimum of $25,000 in health coverage. This is the sugar on top of it all, the stuff that looks good in a press release. To me, these provisions are largely meaningless. And this was something that I said to Congressman Jack when we spoke this week. I mean, the $150 per round is fine, though many promoters, even at the club level, already pay that. I also don't know how you enforce this part of the law for those that don't pay it. I mean, what you're relying on, I guess, is a fighter to report it or a state commission to flag it and then refer it to the DOJ, who would then, go after a local promoter, prosecute them? That just seems totally unrealistic. The medical stuff, that's fine too. But again, most shows, even at the club level, offer that kind of coverage. The real problem with insurance in boxing is getting these insurance providers to pay out. I have firsthand knowledge of what happens when a fighter suffers an injury in the ring and has to have surgery for that injury, and how long it takes to get a percentage of what that fighter is owed. It is months. And this is a fighter I'm talking about with a major promoter and a powerful lawyer. Imagine how difficult it is for an average fighter who needs like a $15,000 surgery to collect on that money. So it is meaningless to say you're offering $25,000 in minimum coverage unless you are requiring someone, the promoter, the state, the federal government, to guarantee at least $25,000 in coverage. To me, it's a toothless legislation otherwise. Now, I've seen a lot of smart people suggest that this is the beginning of TKO building the kind of dominance in boxing that it did in MMA. And look, maybe they're right. I'm sure that's what Dana White wants, what people involved in this want. And you can see the plan. Like, sign a bunch of mid-tier guys now, have a contender-like series next year, then get a couple of A-level guys and slowly acquire talent using opportunity and Turkey's money to lure them over. I mean, these are smart guys we're talking about that are organizing this. UFC was a sideshow when Dana White bought it. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar entity that has lapped every boxing promotion out there. UFC is sifting through billion-dollar offers for its rights fees. After this weekend, boxing will be off linear TV completely for the first time in nearly a century. I mean, the time to make a move like this is exactly now. But a couple of things there. People have tried to monopolize boxing before. That part is not new. And boxing, one of the few things it's pretty good at is resistance. I mean, Al Heyman had a plan in the early teens when he formed PBC and cut all those broadcast deals. Eddie Hearn had a plan when he hit the US in 2018 with all the DAZN money. None of it's worked. I mean, UFC has had competition over the years, but nothing that was as entrenched as Golden Boy or Top Rank or Frank Warren or Eddie Hearn. And as long as these promoters have broadcast deals, they are going to be able to sign fighters. They may have slimmed down businesses, but they will stay in business. I also think traditional boxing promotions will still be appealing to top prospects because they can point to a history of success that they have had turning prospects into stars who make a pile of money. I mean, Top Rank is the best in the business at this. Golden Boy is great at finding the Ryan Garcia, Floyd Schofield like diamonds in the rough. Matchroom has proven in the last few years it can take guys like Raymond Ford, Richardson Hitchens, Diego Pacheco, and elevate them to championship levels. And here's the other thing to kind of bring it full circle as I wrap up here. The current model has the sanctioning bodies. As deplorable as I find the behavior of all of them, fighters do care about these belts. I'm not even talking about the world championship belts. I'm talking about like the NABF titles and the continental titles and the European titles. They carry these belts around with pride. One of the biggest challenges I see TKO facing is getting fighters to care about a TKO branded title. Like, deprogramming them from their traditional system is going to be hard. I mean, they want to win the belts that Ali held, that Sugar Ray Leonard held, that Marvin Hagler, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, that they all held. So if I'm a sanctioning body, this is maybe my final message to them. I'm seeing this legislation and I'm viewing it as a warning. I'm viewing it as a wake-up call. They need to clean up their acts. No more interim titles, no more phony world titles, rankings that are a meritocracy and not influenced by what promoter or manager shows up at your convention. These sanctioning bodies have spent 25 years taking advantage of the Ali Act. Now that it's under stress and potentially being changed, maybe it will shock some of them into actually caring about it. So I know that's a lot to digest, Sergio, but I'll ask you this. You're the former champion, longtime fighter. What was your experience like with the Ali Act, and how do you feel about it potentially being changed?
Forget a lot to ingest. That was a lot to digest right there, Mannix. But see, this is the thing where you're dealing with fancy lawyers and legalities and reading between the lines, because the Muhammad Ali Act came around when I turned pro. I turned pro in 2000, and it sounded great. I remember my trainer, Dean, was saying, hey, listen, we're going to know everything the promoter makes, everything the venue makes. We can go and look at the receipts. We can do everything. Sounded great, because we're not going to leave no money on the table. But then when you have those big fights, when I finally had the big fights, championship fights, and we asked the promoter, we asked our manager, our advisor to go look at the receipts, for some reason, we were never in the plus. We were never in the surplus. We were never in the, we sold this much of merchandise. We sold this. We never got a piece of the action. It was always, nope, it was less than we expected. Pay-per-view was less than expected. This was less than expected. Tickets didn't sell. And Muhammad Ali Act didn't work for me, at least. And a lot of fighters similar to me. I can't really recall one fighter that fought on the championship level that said, hey, the Muhammad Ali paid me more money. Nah, man. It's a legal term. It's legal gibberish. for the people that are in charge of our careers, and they're the ones talking behind the scenes. But for the boxer, personally, I had no good come out of it.